On this week's Eastern Conference Wednesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, what a difference a week can make for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They find themselves facing elimination tonight when they take on the Florida Panthers. We'll get into that series. We'll talk about a series full of blowouts with the Carolina Hurricanes now leading the New Jersey Devils 3-1, and with the New York Rangers parting ways with Gerard Gallant. What are the most attractive coaching positions available among the 5 teams currently without a bench boss? All of it is brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll get $20 off your first ticket purchase. This is the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen on this Wednesday, May 10th. A reminder that Locked On NHL is free and available on YouTube and wherever you download your podcast. Please like and subscribe to the show to help us out, and leave a comment below as well. What's your biggest storyline through the first round and a half of the Stanley Cup playoffs? Is there an off-season storyline that you're already sinking your teeth into? We'll get into the coaching conversation a little bit later. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Senators. Today, as always, I'm joined by Mike DiStefano from Locked On Maple Leafs. And Mikey, I know Ryan O'Reilly said in round 1, do I look nervous? Jordan Binnington said it before, but I have to ask you the question. Down 3-0, are you nervous?
Yes, is the answer. Yes, there are definitely nerves running through Leafs Nation right now. Only 4 teams out of 201 have been able to climb themselves out of a 3-0 hole. And look, the Maple Leafs, I'm not sure they got what it takes. And I say that just based on what have they shown me to believe that they have what it takes. When the going gets tough, the cream will rise to the top. Like, I just haven't seen it from this team before. And what we saw happen in Game 3 was even more disappointing, because it's okay, their back's up against the wall, but they have an opportunity to kind of flip the script here, go into Florida, play their asses off, get the victory, and all of a sudden you got a series. Instead, they fold up, play their worst game of the playoffs, one in which they really haven't brought their A game into any of these games, but it was an absolute no-show from their stars. And now we're sitting here thinking, it's one mistake and the season could be over, and sweeping changes could be made if things go south here the next day or two.
Yeah, we know they're down 3-0, and the chances of them coming back, as you mentioned, only 4 teams have ever done it before, very low. Is there something in particular that, if they're going to go down with a fight, that would give you confidence? Because this team did get somewhere they haven't been in 20 years, right? And now they're looking at a situation where there's no wins beyond that yet. But is there anything that you'd like to see that could build that where you cut short, but it's still a sign? No,
Ross. For this team, in order for this team to even say to themselves, "Hey, maybe we just give it one last go, run it back," like that type of verbiage coming out of this group, if they lose this in 5, 6, 7 games, I don't think it's possible. I think the only way, and here I'll tell you this. Actually, yes, there is one way. They have to pull off the impossible and be the 5th team to go on the reverse sweep and win the series. If they don't punch themselves a ticket into the Eastern Conference, there's nothing they can do. They can go out and they can win game 4, 5, 6, 7-0 apiece. But then if they collapse in game 7 and they don't pull off and finish it off, then of course they're who we thought they were. They can't close. Because now I'm looking back at that first round against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, for those who watched it, I think you could comfortably say Toronto wasn't great in that series. They were outplayed for a majority of it, but they found a way to score some goals and kind of steal some victories. They had Samsonov stood on his head for one game. They had, some timely goals from Ryan O'Reilly and Morgan Riley. And there was the one game where Austin Matthews erupted. But I think you could also look at that now in hindsight and say, well, did Toronto win that series, or did Tampa Bay lose that series? And I'm almost starting to think that, well, yeah, they were kind of outplayed in, 5 of the 6 games, despite winning 4 of the 6. they weren't the better team throughout that series. So now you look at it, if that's 2 series in a row where they didn't even sniff their best hockey of the season and they end up eliminated after the starts of the series that they had, there's nothing they could do. They have to complete the comeback in order to change my perception on, this core and what I believe this core is capable of or not capable of moving forward.
And they're going to be without their starting goalie. Ilya Samsonov will be out at least tonight. Not sure beyond that. So it's got to be Matt Murray playing then, right? 2-time Cup champ.
Ross, I know you know who's playing tonight, and I know you know it is not Matt Murray, former Ottawa Senator legend Matt Murray. It's going to be Joseph Woll, a guy who's played a grand total of 13 games at the NHL level and is now being trusted to be the guy, to be the backstop of this team, down 3-0, and essentially season's on the line, and they felt more comfortable to go with Joseph Woll over Matt Murray. What does that tell you?
It tells me exactly what I told you last July, that you cannot count on Matt Murray as an NHL goalie.
Yep.
There's games where you guys saw it this year. Was it Dallas where he had like the best expected goals of all time? Like he has games where he's unreal. And that's why I almost thought like, hey, you got nothing to lose. You're down 3-0. This guy's done it before in the playoffs. Hell, he did it against Ottawa in 2017. He came in mid-series. Ottawa was up 2-1 in the conference finals, and he just was absolutely unbeatable.
I know. I thought there was a chance that this could happen just because Matt Murray has the higher ceiling, between Murray and Joseph Woll, just because we've seen him have success at this level before in the postseason and in, closeout game scenarios. The guy's won a couple cups. That's why he was brought in here. But ultimately, that was long ago. And this season, he has not been anywhere near the player that he was when he was having that much postseason success as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a shell of what he used to be. And ultimately, I think it does come down to the T word, trust. How can you trust that he can even finish the game for you? Like that's the ultimate thing. Like, forget the game. How can you trust that this guy can make it through warmups, man? Through warmups, like 3 times in his career, has he pulled the chute at warmups? Not once, not twice, 3 times. It's insane. So I think trust is a big factor, but ultimately, I think there's also actually some belief in Joseph Woll. Like, I don't think there's as big a drop off from Samsonov to Woll as some may deem it, just because he has the lack of experience. Doesn't mean that he's not a bad goaltender. I think that he's a very promising goalie. This year, he's got like a .932 save percentage in the small sample size of NHL action that he's seen. He was terrific in the American Hockey League as well. He's technically very sound. So there are some elements to his game that lend you to believe that, okay, if he doesn't overthink things and he just goes out there and plays his game the same way that he has done all season, and the moment doesn't get to him, I think that he'll be perfectly fine. If they lose tonight's game, I doubt it's going to be because of Joe Woll.
Yeah, and he's been good. And you mentioned the numbers in junior. It even goes back to college. He was unbeatable. Yeah. He's just been a great goalie at every level, and he's not the reason why this is 3-0 series. The flip side of all this is the Florida Panthers were in this situation not even 12 months ago, where they won the first round. They kind of exercised some demons. They'd only won, one playoff series in a long time, if that. They got off the schneid, and then they got swept by Tampa in round 2. So it's almost like the shoe's on the other foot. But, of course, they've also made a ton of roster moves since then. The Matthew Tkachuk, you look at behind the bench with Paul Maurice coming in, and they're playing playoff hockey. And I don't think it can be understated for the Florida Panthers how much importance it was them playing for their lives every game for the last 3 weeks of the season. They didn't have to find that extra gear. They had already discovered it throughout that stretch come to the end of the year.
But you would think that at some point they would be able to either that they're going to run out of steam, A, or B, the other teams will be able to catch up to that, especially when you're already through the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like through round 1, okay, I could see maybe for Boston, like they weren't up to that level because they hadn't been playing at that height. But for the Maple Leafs, like when you're 9 games into the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's no way that you should still be outworked and outbeat by this team just because they're already playing like it's the playoffs. Dude, you're 8 games in. The Maple Leafs need to wake up here. It's not mid-December. And that's how they played in game 3, as if it was December 13th and there's nothing on the line. But no, it was their season was on the line, and they had no-shows from everybody. So, again, tonight, it's not going to be Joe Woll who's going to decide the fate of the Maple Leafs and keep their season alive or end their season. It's going to come down to 2 players, okay? 2 players, Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. Those guys have to be the best players on the ice tonight, and they can't just generate chances, because they've been generating chances, all series, realistically, for games 1 and especially in game 2. Game 3, they were quiet. But they've had their chances and opportunities, but this is a results-driven business. The process is only as good as its results, which have not been there. They got to start converting on those chances, or they got no hope in hell of, let alone mounting a comeback. They have no hope in hell of even making it a series.
Mitch Marner, for me, is the guy where all eyes have to be on Mitch Marner. Now, look, all those players with the Leafs, they've got their money, and a lot of them are coming into where they can now renegotiate, coming into their last year of their deals. But when it's Mitch Marner, it's like, okay, your creativity is unreal. 99 points this year. We get it. And he's leading the team in points, so it's almost hard to point this out. But, I mean, we know he had that drought. He figured it out, got a goal, but like 4 goals in his last 34 playoff games. 4 goals in 34 playoff games? I don't know, man.
But,
and we're in 1 game.
He's not a goal scorer.
He's 34.
I know, but he's not a goal scorer. I don't even look at that stat, to be honest with you. But just when I'm looking at this series as a whole, he's been on the ice for 4 goals against and on the ice for just 4. Yeah. And one of those was a power play goal. At 5-on-5, he's been outscored 4-1. At 5-on-5, even the underlying numbers aren't looking pretty. 42% expected goals are the underlying numbers at 5-on-5 when he's out there on the ice. So to consistently say we got to trust our process, your process has you losing your minutes, Mitch. You got to do something else. It's not the process. You got to break through and find a way to elevate, bring your game to that next level in the same way that we've seen other guys do. The same way that Jordan Martinook is doing out in Carolina. Just do what Jordan Martinook is doing, my guy. I don't need you to be Connor McDavid, but be maybe Jordan Martinook, Mitch.
Brandon Montour, not a goal scorer either. 4 goals in his last 5 games in the postseason. Not 34. He might not even have 100 points in his career.
You could argue that guy's a goal scorer, man. He's a hell of a player. Let me tell you this. Like, he had a breakout this season, 73 points, and he scored 5 in the series against Boston. Like, he's got a goal in this series as well. Like, he's a player, dude. Like, he's really arrived as a top end defenseman in this league, which is another big reason why Florida really has been able to take that step. You look at that blue line at the beginning of the season, it looked horrid, but you had guys like Montour take a step. Gustav Forsling.
That was Armando from Locked On Florida Panthers. Go like and subscribe. Go check him out. Before the season, we did all of our divisional previews, and we said, who's the X factor? Who's the breakout candidate? And he's like, this Gustav Forsling kid. No clue about him. He's unreal.
Yeah, he's a good player. And look, he was in the Canucks system for a while. So, like, I remember when he got drafted, he was part of the Adam Clendening trade where they moved him. They moved him to Chicago, and he ended up in Florida. And his game has really been put together in the last year he started to really put it together. And then this year he exploded and has become, a top player for him. Like, he's a defensive defenseman. He can defend well, but he also can move the puck. And he's been a big reason for why this team has been able to shut down the big boys and why they're up 3-0. It's not necessarily, Aaron Ekblad hasn't been a stud back there. I think Gus Forsling and Brandon Montour are 2 guys who stepped up this year. They've continued that strong play into the playoffs, and they rode it all the way through the Boston series. Now here they are up 3-0 on the brink of reaching the conference final if they can get a win tonight against Toronto.
We can give the Florida Panthers a few more flowers after a quick break. We're going to get into the Devils and Hurricanes series. That's been a storm of blowouts. And then we'll wrap up talking a little coaching carousel and who are the most attractive destinations. What are the most attractive destinations for any coach who's looking to get their foot back or into the league? That's all coming up next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? Well, if you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills. Why would you do that when all you need is Indeed? Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of virtual powering tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. You hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match their job description the moment they sponsor a post. So Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for the quality applications that match your must-have requirements. Visit Indeed.com/locked-on to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on, Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Locked On NHL, local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear more discussion about the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mike DiStefano and David Morasuti have that for you. Locked On Leafs, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Just hit 10K on yesterday's episode, already at 5 today. So join the conversation over at Locked On Maple Leafs and also Locked On Panthers. Mikey, as you know, I'm a well-versed Leafs hater, of which there are many. I tweeted the exact same thing after each of the last 2 games. 600 likes on the first one, 800 tonight. You think I hit 1,000 if I do it again tonight?
Probably. Are you getting a retweet from Meth?
No, I'm not even though, I mean, he is like an all-time Leafs hater. The misspelling of Matthews was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
But he just knows how to get under just the biggest troll for Leafs Nation. Mark Mathot, biggest troll. You're behind, second. Maybe Pete Blackburn can be tossed into the conversation, but I think you're up there with you and the Locked On Sens account, pal.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. So the tweet is it's all the people in what we call the Leaf Pile. I believe you guys call it Maple Leaf Square. We call it the Leaf Pile outside, and everyone's chanting, "We want Florida." So I just quote tweeted, all caps, "We want Florida," and then clap, 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 clap.
To be fair, there were just as many "We want Boston" chants, but those.
And I would have used that if Boston went up against them in the series.
No, I know, but everyone's like, "Oh, you asked for Florida, you got Florida, you're getting what you asked for." There were a lot of people who also wanted Boston in this series. They felt that the Maple Leafs needed to exercise that demon as well. Go up against Boston. And there's a belief that things would be so different if they were playing Boston, as if, the Toronto Maple Leafs it was a letdown for them, and it kind of took the gas out of the helium out of the balloon a little bit when Florida went through and they had to play Florida instead of Boston. How much did that affect the mindset of this Maple Leafs team? There's a theory out there that impacted a lot of what the mindset was and why they've come out looking so sluggish and so disinterested, because they were prepping and expecting Boston and were kind of let down themselves when it didn't happen.
Well, you know who they got? The Cats. Meow.
Yeah.
Matthew Tkachuk leading the way, 15 points in 10 playoff games. Like from a guy who's been locked into every game this series. I've been watching every game too. I mean, it's must-watch TV whenever the Leafs are in the playoffs, whether you love or hate them. It's impossible to be neutral on them. Who's been the biggest surprise to you of Panthers players? We know Matthew Tkachuk's ridiculously talented, but has there been kind of an unsung hero for you on the Cats side?
Well, I guess we already kind of touched on Gustav Forsling, so I'll leave him aside, although he would be somebody also who is in that conversation. I'm going to give you a name by a guy by the name of Anton Lundell.
Unreal.
Anton Lundell. He is, man. And look, he had a really good rookie season last year, and then I think, not that he fell off this season, but it wasn't as good as a sophomore bump that I think he would have anticipated on having. But boy,
11 less points in 12 more games for Anton Lundell. His rookie season, he was plus 33. This year, he's plus 1.
There you go. So, a little bit of a letdown after a strong rookie campaign. And, he didn't let that impact him. He said, "Oh, well, all right, new clean slate in the playoffs. Let's go. Let's get back at her. Let me be that first-round talent I was drafted and I'm expected to be." he's been terrific, man. That whole third line of him, Luosterainen, and Sam Reinhart, like they've been on the ice for some big goals. They're on the ice for the overtime winner in Game 3. They were the ones who very quickly responded, in Game 2 when Toronto went up 1-0 and took that early lead. That was quickly cut and by that line. They've been a problem so far in this series. Matt Tkachuk, he was a big issue in Game 1. They've kind of, not that they've solved him, but he's been quieter in the second and third game. That third line, Lundell and Reinhart, they've been big problems the last couple games here.
Yeah, I mean, an easy name for me to throw out there too is Sam Bennett. It's just built for the playoffs. Yeah. I know he's pointless in his last two, but maybe this is more for the entirety of the playoffs rather than just this series. But like, he's a guy that every playoff team just would love to get their hands on.
Yeah, that's physical impact, right? And like mental impact of what he's bringing. It's not necessarily the production from Sam Bennett here in this series, but he's bringing impact in other ways. That's the intangibles conversation. And Sam Bennett, he's got all the intangibles you want to be a playoff performer.
Yeah, completely agree. And we can't have a conversation with the Florida Panthers right now without discussing Sergei Bobrovsky. Like, is there any sort of roadmap to how to beat this guy right now?
Well, I mean, yeah, keep peppering shots on him. I mean, what else can you really say other than keep peppering him? I think there's been opportunities that have been squandered for the Maple Leafs. It's not that his rebound control hasn't been elite. There have been chances, there have been pucks sitting around the crease out in front of the goal, and the Leafs have been able to hop on second or third chance opportunities. However, they're not getting to the pucks. They're losing those battles in front of the net by the defensemen are either getting it out of the zone or they're tying up sticks, and they just haven't gotten those opportunities. But they're there. They just got to win some of those battles. The Maple Leafs do, and I think that's a way that they can find some success here on Bobrovsky. I think they only have 2 goals below the hash marks in this series so far, so they got to find a way to get.
That's where Leafs players don't really like going.
Well, and that's the problem. That's why they're not scoring goals.
But Marner's not going to listen to you. You hear him yesterday, very defiant attitude. Whoa, we're not going to listen to you guys. We don't care what you think. Nothing makes me think he cares more about what we think than him saying 5 times in 30 seconds that he doesn't care.
I know, but here's the thing, Ross. Is there anything that we're saying out here in the media? I mean, should they not be saying the same thing to themselves within the locker room? Like, they may not care what we're saying, but I think they have to at least acknowledge that what we're saying is valid. Because they should be saying it themselves. They should be holding themselves accountable within the room. They want the lip service outside. They want to say whatever to the cameras. But within that room, when the cameras are off and when the doors are closed, they better be holding themselves accountable, because if they're not, you're not going to have a good effort tonight. They're going to go out there and probably put up the same stinker they did in Game 3.
My favorite part of kind of the Leafs machine, and I'll leave it at this, but it's like you see the effort, and Leaf fans are just cursing, they want more from the star players. Then it goes to commercial break, and it's Austin Matthews commercial, the banking commercial. Then it's Mitch Marner skip the dishes commercial. Then it's Ryan O'Reilly Osmos commercial, and then they go back. You're like, God damn it.
Yeah.
For more on the Florida Panthers, check out Locked On Florida Panthers with Armando Velez. Speaking of Locked On hosts, our boy Trey Matthews was boots on the ground, eye in the sky, credentialed media member with the New Jersey Devils, and he saw his team get absolutely taken out back to the woodshed. We'll get into that series and talk some coaching carousel next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite event should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of sports, music, comedy, and even theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you have. Game Time is the place for last-minute ticket deals. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country, and for good reason. Snag the tickets without the stress at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL, and you'll magically, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's credit. Create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, Mike. Leafs, Panthers tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern. That will be followed by Vegas and Edmonton. Of course, we have local experts on the biggest stories each day, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm talking Vegas Golden Knights. I'm talking Edmonton Oilers. I'm talking Carolina Hurricanes, New Jersey Devils. Every team you can find a Locked On podcast. Now, this series, if you're an outsider, probably not the most fun to watch. It's just been blowout after blowout. The Carolina Hurricanes getting a 6-1 win yesterday to take a 3-1 series lead. Like, I don't want to say that the Devils are done, but are we going to get a close game in this series, Mikey?
Yeah, because we have 5-1, 5-1, 8-4, 6-1.
Sick.
So none of these games have been decided by 3 or less. It's been 4 or more in each of these. That's kind of insane to think about, and which is interesting because you look at how dominant both of these teams have been all season long. And if I had to guess, like if you stripped away the names of the teams that I just got, like the stat sheet of what was happening, I would honestly think that it was the Devils that would be the team leading things, because you look at how many goals they've scored, or how many goals that the Carolina Hurricanes have scored. They've got
Right.
10, 14 plus 6, 20 goals through 4 games. A team without Svechnikov, without Teravainen, without Pacioretty, I can't believe that they're out here putting up as many goals as they are. I would have expected that number to be in the Devils column, where they've got a plethora of offensive talent, but no one's finding the back of the net outside of that Game 3 performance.
It's wild to me. Now, I bet against Carolina in round 1. I bet against Carolina in round 2, and I just feel so dumb about it because they're so well coached. They work so hard on defense. They get great goaltending. Their defensive structure has to be the best in the league. Look, they knew that they had Tony DeAngelo on like a 1 year, just like get him back in the league type deal. They knew he was gone. Going out to get Brent Burns was like one of the smartest decisions. People thought he was washed. Hell no. This guy looked so rejuvenated playing on that top 4 or in that top 4. Like they just, like, Don Waddell took a lot. I think that the stain was on Don Waddell's name for a long time about what happened in Atlanta. But man, year after year, he's showing this guy is, and they have a great staff there. I think it's Eric Tolusti, if I'm not mistaken. One of like what's that?
Eric Tolsky, I think.
Polsky, yeah, he's like one of the top analytics guys in hockey. They've got a great scouting staff, but they just keep producing. They find ways to win, and it's super impressive. That barn is on my NHL rink bucket list. Like, it sounds insane, the atmosphere down in a non-traditional hockey market. So I love it from that standpoint. I love that it's like a team that doesn't take shortcuts. Like, I don't know if the stats back this up, but from the eye test, I feel like not a whole lot of their offense is produced off the rush. I feel like they're such like a down, like the opposite of the Leafs. They're like a down low possession team. They got bigger bodies, and like they're using Stefan Nason on their top 6. Like, they have these just plug and play guys, but it just seems to be working.
Dude, Martinook has 9 points so far through this series. 9 points.
10, no?
10. I heard 10, and then I thought I read it today, and I think one of them got taken off the board. So I think it was 9, but I could be wrong. Maybe that didn't happen. Maybe whoever I read this morning got the number wrong, because at one point it was 10, and then I thought there was a stat correction to make it 9. But regardless, 9 points, 10 points, either way.
Check it out. We got Hockey Reference. Shout out Hockey Reference. So good. 9 points, 3 goals, 6 assists in 4 games.
So there you go. He's been absolutely unbelievable in this series. And last night it was a lot off the rush. They created a lot of their goals last night off the rush. And they were just, going to the net, Martin Necas, stick on the ice, getting a couple of redirects, following up. You had Martinook, who was just firing it into the net with a blistering shot off the rush. So last night they were getting a lot of rush opportunities, but I feel like they're also like, it's just, they turn defense into offense. That's the thing. They force turnovers and they kind of close in on you. They suffocate you and they force you to turn the puck over, and then they end up getting some counterattack goals. So, I think they do generate some stuff off of the rush, but they could probably do a lot. Like that team, they could just, you know what it is about them? I think they're just incredibly deep. Like, honestly, they've got 4 solid lines. They got 3 great pairs. And apparently Freddie Anderson learned how to play playoff hockey. Didn't do it for years in Toronto, but now he's in Carolina, and here he is. So
Freddie Lalime in Game 7.
Well,
my fun fact:
they haven't had to get to a Game 7 yet.
Well, fun fact about Jordan Martinook before this series. Well, even game 1 of this 2, because they played. Why is this showing? Oh, the Islanders. Okay, thank you. Now I figured it out here. Shout out Hockey Reference. Very good site. So he scored in game 2, 3, and 4 of this series. Now I'm just looking at goals. He had not scored in his last 24 playoff games before this. And now he's got back-to-back goals. It's crazy. This is just kind of playoff hockey for him. He had 2 playoff goals in 41 career games before this series, and now he has 3 in his last 3. So just absolutely popping off.
That's unsung hero-esque. And, he's a guy, too, who depth player, not signed to a big, fat contract, but he's coming up big for his team, and he's providing that depth. And a big reason why this team is with a commanding 3-1 lead and a chance to advance tomorrow night.
How do you fix the New Jersey Devils?
Goaltending. Get a goal who can stop a puck. Vitek Vanacek has allowed 4 goals on every single time he's played.
Yeah, well, and Akira Schmid came back down to earth pretty quick there after being unbelievable against the Rangers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's tough.
Hey, Kevin, how's it going? I hear that your backstop, Connor Hellebuck, may not want to stick around very much longer. Could I interest you in a conversation here?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That would be a great landing spot for him. I'm still convinced somehow both he and Kyle Connor find their way to Detroit. Like just home. I'm a sucker for the hometown story. I've been for years.
You don't got any belief in the what do they call it? The ISA plan? No, what do they call it over there? The ISA plan? Maybe they do call it the ISA plan. Either way, Sebastian Cossa is not. You don't have belief in Cossa?
Nope, I don't. Nah. He's in the ECHL.
Cossa? Wasn't he in junior? He was in junior this year.
Oh, he's playing the ECHL. He's the ECHL goalie of the year. So I guess from that standpoint, that's cool.
Are you sure? Wasn't he at the World Juniors?
The Toledo Walleyes? Sebastian Cossa.
Was it last year he was at the World Juniors?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, I thought it was this season.
Where are we at? Yeah, Toledo Walleyes played 46 games down there, 913 save percentage.
3 playoff games.
Don't look at his AHL numbers, though.
Looking good in the playoffs. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, sweet. Well, let's talk coaching for a moment here because we've got 5 open spots right now. Those teams are the New York Rangers, who we mentioned just this week. Gerard Gallant mutually decided to part ways. The Washington Capitals, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then a pair of Western Conference teams, the Anaheim Ducks and Calgary Flames. What's most attractive for you if you're a coaching candidate?
Probably the Rangers. I would say I think that the Rangers are still a great team. They've got the goalie in Igor Shesterkin. They've got a perennial, defenseman of the year candidate in Adam Fox. The Trouba train is still around there. They've got the pieces, I think, to still be successful. And they've got some older guys as well and some youth that they are hoping can take that next step. So I like the blend. I like the depth, of skill, of grit. They kind of have it all. I'm still shocked at how poorly they actually played in the playoffs this year. It just didn't seem right the way that they're built. But it happens. Trust me, people in Toronto know well. That's why you play the games, right? On paper, don't mean it's not worth the paper it's written on, is what they say. But I still think that that's a quality group. And if I was a coach, I would look at them and be like, they're closest to winning. I want to go to that franchise. I want to coach that team. And maybe we could do some damage.
They even have young talent that just seems untapped right now. Like Lafreniere, no points in the playoffs. Like they have so many guys who you think if you're a coach, you're like, I can unlock them. I can get these high picks the next level.
But what do you think that is though? I think most of it is opportunity. They just haven't given these kids enough opportunity. Lafreniere is playing 14, 15 minutes a night.
It's insane to me that he didn't just play on the top line with Zibanejad and Panarin and let these skilled guys figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not.
I don't know. That's a real interesting person that you'd have to imagine. Whoever's coming in to chat about coaching, they're probably going to say, "Okay, well, how do you think you could help Lafreniere reach his potential? Because that's got to hit. That's got to work. He's the number one pick. We invested a lot into him. How can you get the best out of him?" I imagine that would be one of the questions involved in the interview process.
Yeah, it would have to be. And they've got the best goalie too at all these teams. So you're just like, okay, well, show me a good goalie, I'll show you a good coach mantra. So that's always helpful. If you're coming in, it's an original six, it's Manhattan, it's MSG, like all the aura that goes around that. So easy choice, I think, for the New York Rangers being number one. I might be going a little outside the box, though, number two. I'm going with the Anaheim Ducks, just a young core of nucleus to get the second overall pick here in the mix as well. And they also had some injuries this past season, most notably Jamie Drysdale, where it's like, I don't think they're as far away. And did you hear this, Mikey? The defenseman of the year in each of the WHL, OHL, and Quebec League, all Ducks prospects. Tristan Luneau in the QMJHL. You had Pavel Minchikov, 10th overall pick in the OHL, and then out west, Olin Zellweger, who's just ridiculously talented. So there's a lot coming for Anaheim. So if I'm a coach, I'm like, okay, there's still some leash for me here. If I suck next year, they're probably happy, get one more high pick, but there's so much talent up and coming.
Just want to put it out there. Pavel Mintyukov, Tristan Luneau, two players that I personally coached at last year's Top Prospects tournament. I was so thrilled to see my boys go out there and have the year that they did. I still think they think back to that motivational speech that I had ahead of that game, and they probably replayed it in their brains before every single game to get them pumped up. I think they do it. I really do think that's what happens here.
And meanwhile, Olin Zellweger is going to be going for a 2-week holiday before Kamloops hosts the Memorial Cup. They just lost in the Western Conference Finals in the WHL.
Wasn't that guy traded for like 18 first-round picks?
Yeah,
or something
it was like 10 different picks. But at the same time, it wasn't quite the same value in terms of the amount of picks. But Zach Ostapchuk was traded from Vancouver to Winnipeg, and they're in the finals. Fun little note here, because I think you were the one who we were talking earlier this year. Winnipeg Ice play in like the university arena. It's like 12 seats. So they're going to get to play the WHL final at Canada Life Center. They're not opening up the top, but they'll have the whole lower bowl. And guess who they're playing? Brad Lambert and the Seattle Thunderbirds. So that's going to be a nice little storyline there. They also have Dylan Genther, Arizona Coyotes, top 10 pick. The Seattle Thunderbirds. They got that Luke Prokop defenseman from Nashville. Like, they are stacked up too. That's going to be a hell of a series. Seattle and Winnipeg, and we got the finals in the OHL coming up. I think it's the London Knights. Do you know who they're playing off the top of your head? Is it North Bay? I want to say it's
honestly
OHL.
I've been out of the loop with the Leafs being in the playoffs, this deep into the playoffs. I've been a little out of the loop on the junior hockey circuit, but hey, the London Knights are always there, so that's not all too surprising. We'll see what ends up happening.
They're playing the Peterborough Petes in the OHL finals, and in the QMJHL finals, the Sherbrooke Phoenix will take on my Halifax Mooseheads.
There we go.
Great junior hockey town. London and Halifax, probably 1-2 in the country in terms of junior atmospheres.
Question for you.
And Quebec Rempart. I got a Quebec Rempart too. I'll get roasted.
Question for you before we put a bow on today's show. Obviously we know that these are the teams that are out there looking for head coaches, the Rangers, Calgary, Anaheim, Washington, and Columbus. If Toronto loses tonight, I'm of the belief that Keefe is gone.
And Dubas?
Maybe Dubas. I'm still iffy on that one. I think it depends on what Dubas is willing to do moving forward. I think there has to be a coherent plan in place, not just come back with the same group with a new coach. I think there's got to be some big-time changes. If he's got the cojones to make those changes, then I think he could stick around, but I don't know if he does. He said it way too many times. I believe in this group. We can, we will, all that nonsense. Well, they haven't done it yet. So we'll see what happens with Dubas. But I think the coach for sure gone if they lose in the game tonight. Or if they lose a series, I think he's gone. The question is, where would Toronto sit here in the most attractive jobs list, would they be number one for you, or do you think still the Rangers?
Probably the Rangers. There's just that scrutiny that they're facing, and people are probably watching that. I think coaches would obviously jump at the opportunity to coach the high-end talent, but I think with the Rangers, it's just a little bit less under the microscope. You're
Which is
you're not
weird.
even the most popular
Big
team in your
Apple.
building, right? You got the Knicks playing in the same building.
True. This is very, very true. Did you see the report? Apparently,
The Leafs are more
Sheldon
popular
Keefe
than the Toronto Rock, right?
yes, slightly. Yeah. Plus, the Rock actually play in Hamilton now
What?
anyway.
They don't play at the same rink?
No, they play at Hamilton at the old Cop Coliseum, whatever they call it now. First Ontario Center, I think. Yeah.
Huh.
But did you see the report? Apparently, the Rangers would be Sheldon Keefe being a person of interest if the Maple Leafs do move on from Sheldon Keefe. What'd you make of that report?
Did he play for the Rangers? I want to say
I don't know.
I want to say no. He played for just Tampa. Just
Yeah, I knew Tampa, but I wasn't sure where else.
yeah, that was it. I mean, he's a hell of a coach. I also saw 32 Thoughts throwing out Mike Babcock's name for the New York Rangers.
Oh, man.
Is he still
that
paid?
guy?
This might be his last year.
I think this is his last year. Yeah.
Way to make a living, dude.
Yeah, so starting next year, he can sign with any team without having to get the sign off from Toronto. So I imagine he would get there. Like, I don't know which team, like Calgary might be an maybe not Calgary actually. I don't think Calgary would be an option there. Maybe Washington. Go with Ovi, little veteran group there.
Interesting.
I don't know. Would be interesting.
Lots.
See what happens tonight, though.
We're really
see what happens tonight.
Hey, you can get everything at Locked On Leafs, Locked On Panthers after tonight's game, and make sure you're locked on NHL wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. For today, we say goodbye. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan. Thank you to the Game Time app. Thank you to Indeed. We'll pass it over to Power Rankings Thursday tomorrow on Locked On NHL. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.